I'd like to ask everyone to please use the Q&A box for your questions, and we will be recording today's session. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the South Arts webinar for the new In These Mountains project grant. Today's webinar will be captioned to support attendees who are deaf, hard of hearing, or may prefer to read captions. You may enable or disable captions in your Zoom meetings control bar. Also, please know that this webinar is being recorded, as I mentioned earlier, and we will make it available on our website for those that missed today's session. I'm Teresa Hollingsworth, Director of our Traditional Arts Program. I'm pleased to introduce my colleagues, Dr. Joy Young, Vice President of Programs, and Ellie Dassler, Assistant Director of Traditional Arts. I'd like to invite both Joy and Ellie to say hello right now.
Hello. Great to see everyone.
This morning, we will provide a general overview of South Arts and our programs, but we will focus on the In These Mountains grant. I will share an overview of the In These Mountains initiative, and we'll spend time discussing accessibility, helping you to learn more about South Arts expectations in this arena. Now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Dr. Joy Young to share more information about South Arts. Joy?
Good morning, and again, thank you. So I'd like to begin our conversation today with a brief overview of South Arts and our priorities. Our mission statement is advancing Southern vitality through the arts. Our work and purpose is designed to address issues important to our Southern region and to link the South with the many cultural aspects of our community. The South is committed to this wonderful work and all that is happening within our region. And so let me just share that South Arts is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA. We have embraced this organization and this work with this mission statement, this important mission statement. South Arts envisions a future in which everyone has equitable access to the arts, regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, ability, geography, religion, and communication styles. South Arts commits to centering those who have been systemically excluded from participating equally in the arts, as well as acting deliberately to challenge oppressive and exploitive systems in the South and the arts field. We believe that only by creating a more equitable arts landscape can we meet our mission of advancing Southern vitality through the arts. We also know that organizations led by and serving people of color and artists of color are under-resourced. We are committed, again, to DEIA, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we have prioritized this commitment to ensure that historically underrepresented and systemically disenfranchised communities and organizations, as well as artists, are represented as both applicants and grantees. In addition, we encourage applications for projects that engage these communities. We call them BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, and LGBTQIA artists. When we talk about BIPOC-led, again, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color-led organizations, this can mean that the representation can be in the leadership role or a majority of the staff or board. The next slide, please. As the Regional Arts Organization, we partner with the National Endowment for the Arts and our 9 state arts agencies. In partnership, we deliver a variety of services and programming. Now, most of our programs operate within our 9 state region, but we also have programs that reach beyond these states to serve the national arts community, specifically our program through Jazz Road. So, a bit about our work. We fulfill our mission and our goals by supporting artists' grants and fellowships through the individual artist career grants, fellowships, traditional arts programs, community and organization grants, and Southern Cultural Treasures. We have programs and conferences such as Southern Circuit, Arts Ready, Emerging Leaders of Color, Creative Placemaking, and In These Mountains. Now, Teresa is going to provide more information about the ITM In These Mountains initiative. And again, I'm so pleased to join you. Have a great day, and thanks again. Teresa?
Thank you, Joy. The In These Mountains project grants are a component of the larger In These Mountains Central Appalachian Folk Arts and Culture Initiative. For the last 4 years, we have worked with traditional artists, culture bearers, and organizations throughout Appalachian Regional Commission counties in Kentucky, North Carolina, and Tennessee. In These Mountains is a multi-component initiative that provides opportunities to share, teach, preserve, document, and carry forward the folk arts and culture of Central Appalachia. Next slide, please. Our work concentrates on the deep-rooted traditions found in Appalachian, African American, Anglo American, and Native American communities, focusing on food waste, craft or material culture, and music. Our In These Mountains project grants are a new opportunity only for organizations located in Appalachian Regional Commission counties in Kentucky, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Next slide, please. Projects must address the genres of either foodways, craft or material culture, or music. Projects must take place between July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. That is the fiscal year for South Arts. Next slide, please. Successful grants will be awarded at the $10,000 level. These grants do not require a cash match. While developing your budget, we encourage applicants to allow themselves up to 20% or $2,000 to support overhead for their organization and projects such as operating costs, like staff salaries, rental for your facility, paying for electricity bills, or for internet access. Again, the deadline for application is 5:00 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, May 16th, 2022. In These Mountains project grants encourage applicants to think about potential projects that have always been on an organization's wish list. Perhaps you have not had the resources to launch such an endeavor. You may want to offer a summer folk arts camp, begin a new podcast, program a festival stage, or conduct research for a forthcoming exhibit. All applications will be reviewed by a 5-member panel of traditional arts experts. Using the following criteria or benchmarks, applications will be evaluated as follows. Support of traditional arts and culture, 40%. How well does the proposed project help to identify and/or perpetuate traditional arts and culture in your community? Community benefit, 20%. How will the project benefit your community? Budget, 10%. Explain how the funds will be used. Organization mission and goals, 10%. How well does this project reflect or further the mission or goals of your organization? Accessibility, 10%. How accessible are your organization's facilities and your project plans. And lastly, organizational capacity and evaluation, 10%. What is your organization's ability to successfully carry out and evaluate the project? As part of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility work, I will now address accessibility. You are required to ensure physical and programmatic access for individuals with disabilities. This is a requirement for project funding and a civil rights issue. Let's try to look beyond ensuring that people who use wheelchairs can get into your building and have access, as important as that is. But let's take a look at how to ensure accessibility for people with mobility, vision, hearing, and cognitive disabilities. For mobility, think about how you can offer a barrier-free environment, companion seating, or effective communication, such as physical signage or a website with instructions and options for transportation and arrival. For vision, consider large print materials. These would be publications that would be in a 16 to 18 point type. Braille, audio description, or tactile experience opportunities. Hearing resources can include assistive listening systems, real-time captioning, or American Sign Language interpretation. And cognitive or sensory options may be in the forms of offering sensory-friendly programs, pre-visit preparation materials, break spaces, and most importantly, staff training about providing sensory-friendly services to visitors. Often grant applications focus just on facility accessibility. Beyond that, we want to know what actions you will take for programmatic and communications accessibility. Do your planning or advisory committees include people with disabilities? Will you provide large print programs and labels, American Sign Language interpretation, and/or audio description? Remember that many people, from baby boomers with limited mobility to young people on the autism spectrum, want to fully participate in the arts activities that you offer. Being thoughtful and proactive about accessibility can also help increase your audience. There are lots of resources available for accessibility learning. The National Endowment for the Arts Design for Accessibility publication was relaunched recently. They also offer a self-assessment and other tools to help you improve accessibility. The Americans with Disabilities Act centers are rich resources and they are free. The Kennedy Center, your local state arts agency, and South Arts offer resources as well. We encourage you to visit these websites for helpful resources and tools. To apply for an In These Mountains project grant, first carefully review and understand the guidelines. Get familiar with GoSmart. This is the platform that we will use for In These Mountains grant submissions. Gather materials like work samples together early so that you have plenty of time to review them and upload them into your grant application. Please use our scoring criteria or matrix as a guide as you prepare your application. The matrix provides benchmarks, and we reviewed those a few minutes ago, so I really encourage people to take the time to look at each of the benchmarks. Make sure you have the technology to upload the necessary documents. As a reminder, we do not extend deadlines, so plan accordingly. Please give yourself enough time to plan your grant and to load it into the GoSmart program. Important tips for your application. Provide details. We need as many details as possible about your project. Address all questions. Please do not skip a question. Proofread your work. Provide good work samples. Please do not make assumptions. Do not assume that our grant reviewers are familiar with your organization. That's why the details are so important. Once again, use the evaluation criteria as a guide for developing your application. Use available resources. A few tips about using the GoSmart platform. Please first review the narrative questions. Note maximum length for responses. Develop your responses in a Word document first. Please use spell check. Please use the character count and save often your progress. Collect and scan any physical documents early so that they're ready to upload online. And finally, please review your application several times before submission. Often it's good to have a second proofreader take a look at your application. They may spot an item that perhaps you have missed. Next slide. If you are awarded an In These Mountains project grant, you will be expected to agree to the contract terms, acknowledge South Arts as your project funder, and provide both a midterm report and a final report. So let's take a look at the questions that you have at this moment. We have a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to read a few of those and answer each question as time allows. But if you have additional questions this morning, or you think about questions later, of course, you can always contact Ellie or myself. So I'm going to ask Ellie now to share any questions we might have.
Thanks, Teresa. This is a reminder that you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and type your questions in there, and then we'll be able to answer them. As we're waiting for questions to filter through, maybe I can ask a question that people might be curious about to kick us off. So what if, this is a question that I know I've gotten a few times from folks, what if I run an organization within an Appalachian Regional Commission county in the eligible states, but I'm not an incorporated nonprofit or 501c? Is there still a way to participate in this or not? Teresa, do you want to answer the questions or do you want me to?
Oh,
I can answer my own question.
Yeah, why don't you answer your own question?
Sure. So that was a question that I know I've gotten from a few folks. And the answer is that if you are not an eligible nonprofit organization or educational organization, you can still participate in projects that are applying for the In These Mountains project grants if you are listed as a partner organization. So an eligible nonprofit or educational organization would need to be the actual applicant, but your organization, or if you're an individual artist and you want to participate, the way for you to participate is as a partner or a contracted participant in the project, not as the actual applicant.
I was going to mention also, Ellie, we have also had the question by email from a couple of potential applicants about can they work with artists who are crossing state lines. So if you're an organization in Tennessee and you would be inviting artists perhaps from North Carolina, absolutely. Those artists who are located in Appalachian Regional Commission counties would absolutely be eligible to present within your community as part of your grant project.
All right, we started questions in. Diane Timberlake asks, is the character count stated in the application for each question? Yes, it is. Once you log into GoSmart and you're viewing the application online, you'll see the character count at the bottom of each question. There's a box to type in your answer and the character count will be below that. Someone else asked, does the character count include spaces or not? And I believe that it does include spaces. So if you're drafting your application narrative in Word, on Word, you can have an option to see character count with spaces or character count without, and you'll want to use the character count with spaces to make sure that you don't go over when you try to copy and paste things into GoSmart. Someone else asks, can audio-visual equipment be purchased as part of this grant, i.e. video display panels and stand to be used to create an exhibit?
Yes, absolutely. These funds are for you to, as I mentioned in the presentation, for you to dream and think about projects and project components that perhaps you have never had the resources to move forward or to pursue. So yes, this type of equipment can be purchased using grant funds.
Someone else asks, might we include in the application support letters written by people who understand the project or know the organization? That's a great question.
That's an excellent question. Although support letters are not required, you can include letters of support as part of your support materials. You would need to receive those resources in plenty of time so that you have the opportunity to scan and upload them to include them in your application. So yes, if you would like to include a support letter or two, that would be fine.
And just a reminder that each application can upload 5 support materials of any kind. So when you're putting together your application, think carefully about what's going to be the best kinds of support materials, depending on your project. Another great question. Someone asks, can you elaborate on what is considered traditional and what you would not consider to be a traditional art for this grant? Are you welcoming of artists, researchers, or project coordinators who complicate the binary between traditional and contemporary?
We are focusing on, as I mentioned a couple of times, we are focusing on traditional arts that are found in the Anglo-American, African-American, and Native American communities. But we also want to allow for creativity and for reinterpretation. We are looking at deep-rooted traditions, but we also know traditions are living and that they evolve and that they are impacted by outside sources. They are impacted by new people moving into communities. They are impacted. Many of them have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we want you to be creative, and we look forward to receiving your application.
If you have specific questions about whether the art forms you're considering would be competitive or be a good fit for these project grants, you can always reach out to Teresa or myself, and we can talk more specifically one-on-one. This is maybe a similar question. Somebody else asks, how broad are the categories of foodways, craft, and music, and what to do if your art form, you feel like your art form doesn't fit specifically one of those categories?
We have had we would probably want to have a further discussion with you regarding some more detail about exactly what you're thinking about as far as your application is concerned. I will share that we have had several questions from potential applicants about oral traditions, storytelling, and dance. And we know that these things are interwoven with food traditions, craft, and especially music. So we will allow some flexibility as far as that is concerned, but we probably would like for you to contact us to have a deeper conversation about exactly what type of art form you are considering.
Another question or another example of like flexibility in that way may be that we have worked with folks who work within herbalism traditions as a foodways tradition, even though it's not necessarily food, but it's still working with plants. So yeah, there's some flexibility, but asking is always the best policy.
Absolutely. And absolutely, Ellie. And also, to think very specifically about how you explain these things in your application. Really want to encourage people to think about their responses, to think about you might pretend that the reviewers that are looking at your grant, they know nothing about the art form. Let's say they know nothing about your organization. So the more information, detailed, very specific that you provide, the better.
Lisa asks, can we apply for funding to help with landscaping or relocation of a museum?
We are looking for something more project related as opposed to more operations. So probably these two things, unless you can really connect it to a specific project that you would be presenting to an audience, these would fall more under operations management.
Bonnie, hi Bonnie, asks, our organization promotes sharing of many traditional skills, some of which are rooted specifically in Appalachia and others that are more universal to cultures throughout the continent and the globe. Would the grant funding need to be used specifically for those traditions from this region?
We really encourage that the applications do look specifically at traditions within Appalachia. But once again, we also realize that these traditions have been impacted by new immigrant communities. We understand that things evolve and that things change and that living traditions are not isolated. So you need to think about how you would pose all of these questions or these responses rather within your application. But really we would like for you to highlight traditions that can easily be associated with Appalachia.
Anne asks, how many organizations will receive grants?
We anticipate that between 6 and 8 organizations will receive funding. But I also want to say we anticipate that this opportunity will also be available again in FY24.
Delia asks, can grant funds go towards buildings in which the program would take place?
For that particular question, we would need some more information. When you say go towards buildings, would that mean to purchase a building, or perhaps would that mean to do upgrades or repairs? We would need a little bit more information. Just reading the question as it is, it sounds like this would be more of operational support than project support. If it would go toward a building, perhaps you're installing an exhibit and you're having a new exhibit case built that would be permanently installed in the building, then yes. But if it is to, let's say, repair a restroom, it would be no for this particular grant opportunity.
That said, you can use and are encouraged to put 20% of the budget towards overhead. So if there's something involving more operation support that can be accomplished within under $2,000, within 20% of the $10,000 grant, you could include that. But I think you would want to explain very clearly why that was necessary for this particular project, as opposed to the general operations of your organization. Troy asks, says great information. Thank you, Troy. Are the eligible counties ARC defined or ARC defined economically distressed?
I was going to say we have a list of all the counties available on our website as far as where organizations must be located who are eligible, and they are ARC defined counties.
Deborah asks, can the project be a one-day event, such as a festival that includes workshops and a concert or showcase?
Absolutely. Yes. Would love to see that application.
Are there any other questions? We run through our questions in the box.
As a reminder, we are recording this session and it will be available on the South Arts website in a couple of days. It will, I think, also be available on the South Arts YouTube channel. So please feel free to refer back to this as a resource. And Ellie, do we have any other questions?
We do not have any. We'll say last call if anybody has additional questions to put them in the box. But if you think of questions later, or if you have questions that are more specific to your project, just don't hesitate to reach out to Teresa or to me. We love to talk to folks about their specific projects and and help you get started or answer questions as you're working on your application.
So after, once again, we encourage you to review the guidelines very carefully. And you, as Ellie said, we are always available for assistance. You can contact either one of us. And finally, I just want to thank everybody on behalf of the South Art staff for joining us today. We hope the information that we've shared has been helpful. And once again, if you have additional questions, please call or email me or Ellie. Thank you so much, and good luck with your applications, and enjoy the rest of your day.